Okay, so good morning, class. So, welcome to our class for today. So, this is our class, Lit 316, and we are going to um, tackle about the novel of John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath. And we are using the Marxist criticism or the Marxist lens. Now, before we deepen our exploration within this novel, we are going to know first the summary of the story so that we will be guided along the discussion. For the summary, released from an Oklahoma state prison after serving 4 years for a manslaughter conviction, Tom Wood makes his way back to his family's farm in Oklahoma. He meets Jim Casey, a former preacher who has given up his calling out a belief that all life is holy, even the parts are typically thought to be sinful, and that sacredness consists simply in endeavoring to be an equal among the people. Jim accompanies Tom to his home, only to find it all the surrounding farms deserted. Molly Graves, an old neighbor, wanders by and tells the man that everyone has been tractored off the land. Most families, he says, including his own, have headed to California to look for work. The next morning, Tom and Jim set out for Tom's Uncle John's, where Molly assures them they will find the Wood clan. Upon arrival, Tom finds Ma and Pahuad packing up the family's few possessions. Having seen handbills advertising fruit-picking jobs in California, they envision the trip to California as their only hope of getting their lives back on track. The journey to California in a recti-use truck is long and arduous. Grandma Huad, a 50-old man who complains bitterly that he does not want to leave his land, dies on the road shortly after the family's departure. Dilapidated cars and trucks, loaded down with scrappy possessions, clog Highway 66. It seems the entire country is in flight to the promised land of California. The Wads meet Ivy and Sarah Wilson, a couple plagued with car trouble, and invite them to travel with the family. Sarah Wilson is sick and near the California border becomes unable to continue the journey. As the Wads near California, they hear ominous rumors of a depleted job market. One migrant tells that 20,000 people show up for every 800 jobs and that his own children have starved for death. Although the Huwads press on, their first days in California prove tragic as Grandma Huwad dies. The remaining family members move from one squalid camp to the next, looking in vain for work, struggling to find food, and trying desperately to hold their families together. Noah, the oldest of the Huwad children, soon abandons the family, as does Connie, a young dreamer who is married to Tom's pregnant sister, Rose of Sharon. The Huwads meet with much hostility in California. The camps are overcrowded and full of starving migrants who are often nasty to each other. The locals are fearful and angry at the flood of newcomers whom they derisively label Okies. Work is almost impossible to find or pay such as a major wage that a family's full day's work cannot buy a decent meal. Faring on uprising, the large landowners do everything in their power to keep the migrants poor and dependent. While staying in a ramshackle camp known as Hooverville, Tom and Sheriff over whether workers should organize into a union. When the argument turns violent, Jim Casey knocks the sheriff unconsciousness and is arrested. Police officers arrive and announce their intention to burn the Hooverville to the ground. A government-run camp proves much more hospitable to the Huwads, and the family soon finds many friends and a bit of work. However, one day, While working at a pipelaying job, Tom learns that the police are planning to stage a riot in the camp, which will allow them to shut down the facilities. Tom helps to defuse the danger. Still, as pleasant as life in the government camp is, the Huwads cannot survive without the steady work and they have to move on. They find employment picking fruit, but soon learn that they are earning a decent wage only because they have been hired to break a workers' strike. Tom runs into Jim Cassie, who, after being released from jail, has begun organizing workers. In the process, Cassie has made many enemies among the landowners. When the police hunt him down and kill him in Tom's presence, Tom retaliates and kills a police officer. Tom goes into hiding while the family moves into a boxcar on a cotton farm. One day, Ruthie, the youngest Suwa daughter, reveals to a girl in the camp that her brother has killed two men and is hiding nearby. Fearing for his safety, Mahuwad finds Tom and sends him away. Tom heads off to fulfill Jim's task of organizing the migrant workers. The end of the cotton season means the end of work, and word sweeps across the land that there are no jobs to be had for 3 months. Rains set in and flood the land. Rose of Sharon gives birth to a stillborn and desperate to get her family to safety from the floods. Now, the story was all about kaning ang mga tao is kaning gikuan sila og kaning rights para mabayadan og tarong sa mga sa ilang mga land o sa ilang home nga gikuha sa mga kaning powerless nga people nga atong ginatawag or the bourgeoisie. And then they are not paid well, and even though nga mag-migrate sila, the wage is not enough to sustain the needs and the necessities of the families. So, sige sila migrate pero wala gihapon. So, why do I use Marxist criticism in this novel? So, Steinbeck's narrative represents the problems a capitalist society creates for working class people. Marxist theory, named for the German philosopher Karl Marx, who argued that society should live for the good of all, not the individual, examines social economic systems, that is, Marxist theories ask who possess the power and wealth in a society and how thus these affect the poor and the powerless. They argue that there is a lack of balance between the rich and the poor, and literary Marxist critics read texts such as novels and short stories, to name a few, and to see how authors make a Marxist argument in their work. So that is why Marxist criticism is fit in this novel to be used, because the story tackles about kaning the upper class and the lower class, and that the lower class is being oppressed, the ideology of oppression from the upper class that led the the lower class being powerless and being controlled by the upper class. So therefore the Marxist criticism is fit and or appropriate in this novel. So moreover, on issue about capitalism, an economic system in which private institutions instead of the government control the market, is that it frequently assigns a value to individuals based on their possessions. Even though they have lived on the land for decades and farmed it, the tenant farmers in the grapes of wrath do not own it. They are therefore thought to be worth less than those who actually own the property. In fact, throughout the book, tenant for farmers like the Huwads suffer from a lack of ownership. In addition to having to abandon their farms, they also lack the money to buy a house. And despite traveling to California in the hopes of finding a job that would allow them to buy a house, by the book's end, they are still residing in workers' camps. This is particularly significant to a Marxist critic because the Huwads are homeless and live in a camp while working for affluent landowners like the Hooper Ranch owners who have amassed money by giving their employees wages that are below the poverty line. So, a Marxist critic would refer to the interaction between the Huwads and the owners as the socio-economic relationship between the bourgeoisie, or the haves, and the proletariat, the have-nots. So in the Grapes of Wrath, the Wads stands in for the proletariat, while the banks and landowners symbolize the bourgeoisie. So according to Steinbeck, the bourgeoisie are inhumane because of how they treat the proletariat. Next is for the three evidences from the story The Grapes of Wrath. Make them fear, hate, and suspect each other. So the evidence show dominant oppression as the proletariat or the lower class are being paid shortly and are religiously paid that enables them to feed their families, which means they are being oppressed and devalued in the society. The bourgeoises or the upper class minimize the number of jobs and money available that enables the family to migrate to the West. With this, the bourgeoisie keep the families being tied together because there is a high chance of rebellion if they will united. So, the police make a scene na kan dili ma-united ang mga tao kay mag-rebellion man sila if they will be united. So, the local police trying to find ways to sabotage and abuse the area to break the forming union. Even from migrating from place to place, members of proletariat were unable to escape the greedy and control of the bourgeoisie. They abused their powers of endless wealth and legal freedom to maintain their high status at the expense of those who occupy the poorer classes. For the next evidence, the clouds appeared and went away, and in a while they did not try any more. So the narration served as an evident a dominant oppression from upper class toward the lower class. So because even though the proletariats have inherited vast lands, however, they are oppressed by the upper class and control the phenomena in order to get profit from it. That even if they try to be united and fight their right as the landowners, but they were controlled and powerless, unlike how powerful the bourgeoisie are. For our last evidence, so there's a redundancy from the text, and so the evidence showed a conflict between the upper and the lower class, wherein the workers' right movement demands higher wages and fairer treatment. It does not demand an elevation of hard work. Rather, the movement seeks to restore the dignity of hard work to the migrants. When the workers are respected, when expectations are higher and achievement acknowledged, this is when human beings can begin to find in their labor the transcendence here described. So that's it for our evidence. Let's go on for our conclusion. So the novel of the Grapes of Wrath is one of John Steinbeck's most famous works, and the author managed to describe vividly the hardships and problems that working people had to face. It plunges into the era of the Great Depression, which refers to the 30th and the 20th century and shows the atmosphere of that time in a very detailed way. Observing the settlers, I notice how the author expresses his sympathy with the fate of people who cannot defend their dignity and human rights. I believe that The Grapes of Wrath is a thought-provoking novel as it makes people reconsider their values and principles. So, furthermore, the book teaches to treat each other with respect and kindness, especially in challenging situations. The author explains that only through solidarity, groups of ordinary people can hope to change and transform the system itself. So, therefore, happiness can be found only when all people strive it together. So, I want to clarify something. So, the Grapes of Wrath talk about depression because of the struggles that the characters have been through with the novel. So, that's it for our that's it for today, and thank you.